Yep, and here I am again. I said I was gonna make this video, and now I'm making this video. What do we do with all these guys, all these men? And it's like, I'm not talking specifically about, the Western world and stuff, because it's like, that's obviously none of my business. But like, when we're talking about like, around the world, there's a huge disparity, and we have to address it because it's getting volatile. They're getting like a little too psychotic, if you will. Like they're willing to risk their lives to get over here or America or Australia or UK or wherever as long as they can escape their fate. A fate that they themselves, you know, embellished. They gassed it up. They embraced their fate, their faith, and it also like backfired on them. And yeah, we have like a ton of guys that are here, whether it's the migrants or whether it's like student visas, and they don't want to go back. And there's one good reason why that is. Like certain like insanity. Like even if you get what you want over there, like the crowds of people, the insanity, the lack of oversight, like so much crime and like how like easily it's committed and all that stuff by pretty much everybody. And like it's kind of crazy how like that's what New York wants, like very much. They want to have a sanctuary city where you don't have identification for random people. And you have like, very horrific, cases like, the lady getting burned on the subway, people getting like, sexually assaulted, children, etc. People getting killed and stuff too. I think the worst, or one of the worst ones I saw was like the pregnant lady, and the Tren Awagwa or whatever their gang name is went into the building and started like going door to door, extorting people, and it's like wow, when you think about it, you take it for granted that like an apartment building, when you see it that way, can be a de facto prison because it's like how are they supposed to get out of that situation? Like if you can't trust your landlord or whatever to provide security, then you're done for, and then you're just like sitting in your house, your apartment, whatever. I don't know if like the landlord will just like make an emergency call and be like, "Hey, everybody, evacuate the building. There's like a fire." No, there's like gang members or whatever. No, they're screwed. And like it's crazy how like people would want that because it's like they very much organized and went into like the shelters, people's apartments, abandoned houses, and like that's just like on one side. We're not even talking about the terrorist side, like on the European side. It's happening too in Australia and a bit here in Canada too. Like they want to take over, set up a caliphate, do all this bullshit. And the trippiest thing about this is that whether they're like, true to their convictions or not, I don't really give a fuck, right? But like they know deep down inside that like what they're fighting for is women. The same thing with October 7th. The same thing as Ben Alouze and like all these fucking losers and stuff. Like it's always the common denominator, and like the people who utilize like young people, young women to like means justify the ends, right? So because as long as they can get them pregnant, it's just like this disgusting game that like I even noticed that people were playing back in high school. Although technically speaking, that would be more a little bit more innocent, but like still, it's like cradle robbing in a way because eventually you're gonna like get to the point where you're gonna get a guy who's like 2, 3, 4 years older, and like nobody in that grade can like stand up to or or say anything against them or have the resources this guy has, or you know what I mean. And I'm not just throwing this out as jealousy and shit. I'm just saying this as a fact of life, right? And then like extend that to like what these alpha males are trying to sell you. They're trying to sell you this like bullshit world where they're like this super ultimate guide that will help you throughout your, career choices and life choices. And then eventually, like after you pay them thousands of dollars, your life is going to be so much better. And then you can also invest in cryptocurrency. Oh yeah. Ah, you know the type. You know the type. And pretty much everybody's like that now. Like the famous ones, like even ones for kids, are like, yeah, guys, help me take this cryptocurrency to the moon or some shit like that. It's all soulless. It's all like empty and stuff. We live in this world where like men are just mass produced like this, and like what do you do as an individual to like set yourself apart? And that in and of itself is your prison. Like you finding a way of setting yourself apart. See, if you did what I did, which I don't recommend, and like took it too far with like the fashion and stuff. Like yeah, of course, no one's gonna be like, yeah, he's like that guy, or basically nobody wants to be my friend after that. So it's like it was kind of cool in the sense that like if you see or hear on the news or watch on like internet, article or whatever that like people oh like and like it's this the similar background thing is so vague because for me, right, I don't speak the language and the only thing I have in common with them is my facial features and my skin color, and then that's it. And like they want so badly now, because back in the day they had this like pride thing with them, where like they didn't want to like mess with any like West Indians, or they thought West Indians were like dumb or something, or like we dance too much. And now they're like we're friends, we're allies, because people call them like street shitters. They say over like half of the people in that region, India, Pakistan, Punjab, Afghanistan, they don't use toilets, right? So they open air defecation, as they call it, right? But you have to understand that like if you're gonna be asking that kind of question and it's like a little bit personal because it's insulting if you don't answer it. The binary choice of yes, of course I use the bathroom. Why wouldn't I, right? Like you're gonna get shamed, so people are gonna lie about it. So like over like 500 million people plus like all these other countries. So just like counting India's population, but then if you count Pakistan, all these other countries, so you're getting multiple millions, and then they don't know how to use it, and then they want to run back to you and be your friend now because the whole world knows, and that's how they get down, right? And you see, this is what they did. Like not necessarily the Hindus, right? Although like technically you have like a very traditionalist type of culture, but like the femicide brought from like Islam and like practiced by Sikhism and stuff to like keep their women super strict, have them like breeding at like a very young age and stuff, has created this like mania, this world where people are expelling themselves, like escaping at a rapid pace, basically running away from the problems that they themselves created. Which is ironic to say the least, but they take it everywhere they go. Like Rampton, keen example, but like you see it in Toronto, you'll see it in like Rexdale, you'll see it everywhere. Car crashes, people getting stalked, open defecations, and all that stuff. Like it's crazy to say that because it's like you think that people would know better, but you have to understand, especially in the summertime, like anything goes, man. And like as long as they see like a path or an opportunity to take, they're gonna take it. And we're dealing with the ramifications of that. Like if you see like all the people who latch on to pretty much every single socialist, leftist, like you kind of notice a trend where they're not very much liked by anybody because most likely they don't have a lot going on for them, and they have, you know, oftentimes things about them in their past that they want to hide. So they uh they band together. Like this mod for Hassan has to be like one of those things where like you had to have looked into it eventually and probably like, you know, figure that like, okay, look, this guy's bad for business, maybe I should cut him loose. But like, you know, like it's the contempt for your enemy to use any means necessary to win. But it's also desperation. Like, if you're willing to stoop to that low of a level and utilize people who are, you know, nefarious to say the least, then like your side's gonna lose. Like this mayor who's running, right? Everybody says he's gonna win. Everybody wants him to win. No, he's not. And you want to know why he's not gonna win? He just says dumb stuff. He says dumb shit. Like he says, "Oh, I'm Trump's worst nightmare." Dog, you're nothing. You're nobody. You're just a fucking kid. You're running for mayor in New York City. Do you want to know why people think you could win as a mayor in New York City? Because Puff Daddy got off the charges in New York. That's why you could win. The city's so corrupt. And that's why you see him smiling and doing all this stuff, like saying like, you know, he's gonna basically seize the means of production. I'm gonna control your grocery stores, your convenience stores, your everything. It's all gonna go through this communist mayor. He's gonna get arrested. He's gonna get, you know, tossed. They're gonna have a replacement mayor. New York is a corrupt, you know, state. Nobody really gives a shit. What do you think is gonna happen to New Scum afterwards? Like this is like one of those things where I think that they know that their time is like up, and that's why they're so afraid. Like Hassan's waving his gun, people are doxing, people are like, you know, throwing Molotov cocktails, going all out crazy for Palestine and stuff, because they're losing. They're losing so much that it's possibly one of those things where I think they know that once they've lost, they're probably going to be generationally like insulted. Like I probably don't want to know what that's like, but I can only imagine just like combing over the like hilarity of all the bullshit that, you know, everybody was doing. Like let's not like, you know, be unfair and pretend like, you know, one side did all like, you know, the crazy stuff. Like there's all obviously stuff done by both sides, but if we're doing a numbers game, oh my god, dude, the left versus the right, man. The right versus the wrong. Wait, which one's right? Which one's wrong? Can you imagine open borders being right? You fucking idiot. Yo, how come every single person who's like open borders or free immigration, all that shit, how come they don't want that in their own houses or in their own like whatever? Like basically open immigration means you have a house with no locks or door. You just like leave it, have it open, and that is your house. An open border house. So like, if you don't want that, then why would you want that in your country? Like, isn't that even way worse? Like, because it's like, okay, if anything, somebody who comes in your house would leave fingerprints and stuff, and like, whatever, you could track them down. But somebody who's not from your country isn't gonna leave any fingerprints. They're gonna come to your to your house, break in or whatever, leave their fingerprints. Be like, what the fuck is that? DNA and all that shit. No one's gonna know who it is. Because that's how I think people want to go down. They want like an oppressive class of people that are unidentified, most likely, you know, from the Middle East or whatever, to like rule over pretty much everybody, right? And they're like, you know, the secret police, paramilitary, you know, guerrilla fighters, and they just like come in and, you know, cause perpetual chaos until like the overthrow of the government. And it's just like, you know, some bullshit where it's either pro Islamic theology or like pure. I wouldn't say pure communism because it's like communism sucks. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. Look at all the communist countries. Look at how much they have to suppress their people. I mean, look at Russia. Case in point, Russia, right? The birthplace of communism. Okay, they're fighting a war with Ukraine with a population like a fraction of theirs, and yet for some reason they can't win. And on top of that, they gotta ask for help from other countries, like India, um, North Korea, Iran. They're gonna ask all these countries for like drones and soldiers. They're like asking Indian and Nepalese soldiers, aka mercenaries, and they pay them like whatever, and then they just send them in the front lines to die because they're just like they're just meat. And you know what else they do? And I saw the news segment of this. Their own news reporters and people, and like their stations. They're saying this. They're saying, "Oh, we got our prisoners or whatever. We're releasing them, and we're gonna send them on the front lines. But we don't care. They're meat." Can you imagine? You have a president who's like, "This is okay. Just send in like prisoners." People from third world countries will pay them, whatever, we won't pay them and stuff. Just like some bullshit corrupt stuff. And they still can't win. And you want that for America. You're so pathetic, man. The only reason you want this for America is because you want, Islamic theology. And everybody to be a fucking loser that suppresses women into nothing. And then we're just not only zero progress, but also we just hate ourselves because it's just how can we let losers like this win, like death by self-suicide. I mean, you gotta end it to them, right? If they take over, just off of cringe alone, the depression factor just make you want to off yourself. You gotta see these losers. Listen to what they say. Watch them make countless mistakes, and then eventually people will just flee, flee to another country until they can't run anywhere, and it's just everyone has to get circumcised and be fucking depressed and be a tool of someone else's fate because they're just floods of useless men, just worthless every day. They don't want to work out. They don't want to better themselves, and it's an inevitable self-defeating prophecy where they see their end at you know a whim of a dream, but then eventually settle into mediocrity. Uh, it's the way of life for many people, to be fair, and it's nothing really to insult, but for such bravado, you'd think that people like that would accomplish more, you know, for the sake of just being so annoying. But I think that it's more or less a cope to help them soothe the very fact that they can't live up to their dreams, their fantasy. I really think that sometimes you get guys who are you know on the what do you call it, manosphere, and not all of them, maybe some of them are cool, but most of them happen to have this thing about them where they feel as if they can just keep lying, and as long as they lie to enough people, it's okay. And no matter how hard, they get called out on it, like Ben. They just keep going with it, no matter how hard. It's dude, people are gonna follow up and talk on your shit like Johnny Bravo, Bubba, everybody. I don't know why he did it. It's the same thing with the song. Like, why does he keep doing it? Like he knows too that like he won't get banned, and he's exposing like everybody to like what the real world is. Like, it isn't just Twitch and like pro Islam, pro like Palestinian like stance or whatever. It's basically like the hatred of basically like anybody who would overthrow like the democratic rule overall. You know what I mean? Like, it's been so long since we've had a shift in power, and I don't think Bush was ever a Republican. So it's like establishment favorites. One of them trading hands for the other. And now that we haven't seen like any of that, now we're seeing like just men fighting over like just nothing, as they're being like thrown away. Like, case in point, like Microsoft, right? Now, I was happy because I got this news about MechWarrior 5 mercenaries of all games, not the new MechWarrior 5 clans. But believe it or not, they're coming out with DLC for it. And it's so funny because Microsoft just like laid off 9,000 people. I was just like, what the hell, dude? I mean, again, I still have not looked into whether or not they laid off anybody from Halo Studios, which would be the new 343 rebrand. But if they did, that's good news. That's good news. But yeah, like good times are coming up. Like Microsoft, even though all those people got laid off, unfortunately, like this new add-on for MechWarrior, which is like a 6-year-old game. It's coming up to 6 years now. I remember getting it when it first came out for PlayStation too. So maybe it came out. Well, yeah. So it came out 2019. Oh, that's long. But like, yeah, gonna get that DLC for MechWarrior. It's gonna be really cool. And then like Ghost of Yotei, and then that's it. The ride's over. Playing video games should form like a learning experience. And I think I've had enough, you know, input. I mean, after all, these games are so good. Why even bother getting other games? Well, anyways, thanks for listening to my ramble about, stuff, and have a nice day.